back to Behind the Caution Tape. I'm your host, CrashLit. It was a busy week last week for USC Athletics, and it's going to be another busy week this week for the Trojans. So let's get into all of it right here and right now. And the first news we'll start with on last week, President Carol Folt of USC announced her retirement effective of the end of this school year. This is her 6th year on the job, and while there definitely were some contraries, I think she did do a good job for the most part. And I think definitely one area we have to give her credit, regardless of what you think of her tenure here with the Trojans, is the fact that she really helped get this athletic department on track, especially with hiring Jen Cohen in August 2023 and just being able to get past the mess of Mike Bone and just everything that went wrong during his time here. But I think Jen Cohen's doing a great job. Amazing person. Gotten the chance to meet her, talk to her, take photos with her. She's an amazing person. If you get the chance to say hi to her, definitely take advantage of it. She's so open, really talkative, and just loves this place. So she's such a fun person to chat with, especially about USC sports. And anyways, speaking of athletics now, the Bloom Football Performance Facility or practice facility has now opened, or has broken ground, pardon me, on Thursday. So the $200 million facility was broken ground with President Folt, Jen Cohen, and football head coach Lincoln Riley present in front of a crowd of 200 supporters, leaders, staff, coaches, and players with construction set to start in January. It is named in honor of the $50 million donation from the family of Ronald H. Bloom. Bloom himself was in attendance at the groundbreaking ceremony on Thursday, and he contributed $50 million, as I mentioned. He's been a booster for close to 70 years after graduating from USC in 1955. So the 160 square foot facility will have 3 stories and 2 outdoor football fields and all sorts of amenities to support USC football athletes. USC is still aiming to raise another $40 million, according to Cohen. And Riley also made a big promise, especially in the wake of how the team has been performing over the last 2 years, that he's going to give the same commitment to the boosters and donors that they are giving to him right now, especially with this facility. And I think which is a big part of why USC was able to lure him away from Oklahoma and to USC. While we're on the subject of football, because they're on a bye this week, we're going to talk about them at the start of this piece, something unusual. I know usually because I'm usually at those games or watching them, we slot that near the end of the episode, but we're going to start with it for a lot of reasons. The biggest reason being last Monday, guess we just missed it, recorded a little too early. Kind of had to, consider I had to get this out before the basketball game. I'm not under that same time pressure today. Miller Moss has been benched in favor of Jayden Maiava. Sources reported, 247 Sports reported that sources said that Maiava was called into Riley's office late Monday night and given the word that he'd be the starter going forward. Moss has been benched. Riley confirmed it Tuesday afternoon at practice, and he says there's not to expect much change. However, given that Maiava is a taller and much bigger guy and kind of has more of that dual threat ability that we've seen more from past Lincoln Riley quarterbacks like Caleb Williams and Baker Mayfield, I feel like the offense is more built to Maiava's play style. And that's why I was more impressed with him, I think, at the spring game last year, why initially I thought he should have been the quarterback one. He should have been the starter last year. And I'll give him credit. I think competed neck and neck with Moss in a competition most people thought was closer than it would be. Ultimately, I think it sounded like reports said Maiava was a little, quote, raw, but still he definitely battled, as Riley put it, neck and neck with Moss. So I think it's definitely going to be a good change for this offense, and I think it's one that's needed. I'm really excited. I'm not to say that all the issues were on Moss, but there were just times where the team struggled with him under center. So I think this is just a good change. And I think this is going to be the spark USC needs to help them make it to go bowling and not stay home over the holidays during bowl season. But anyways, wide receiver Jacoby Lane initially didn't react well to news. I get that he's close with Miller Moss, but they did walk back some of his statements on social media and delete the posts. And I get it's frustrating, but still not a great look. Obviously, not Moss, however, handled it much worse in my opinion. And obviously, I'm not even talking about how his mom posted on Twitter, on X, about with that Eisenhower quote about him being a scapegoat. And I mean, that's what parents do. Like, their families support them. We saw Maiava's aunt was doing the same thing a few weeks back, trying to lobby for her nephew to get the starting job. It's what families do. I think they're great insight, but at the end of the day, you got to remember families want their kid to start no matter what the sport is. So you have to keep that in mind when you are talking to parents. However, I think Moss himself handled it much worse. And it seems like, you know what, with the frustration, okay, he's got every right to want to enter the transfer portal. That is valid. And it seems like he's going to. JJ Metz, the beat reporter for the Miami Dolphins, says that he will. And it seems like Michigan might be a possible landing spot considering the quarterback situation this year. It's a pretty one-dimensional offense. They haven't really been able to settle on someone. However, Moss probably should expect that there will be competition. Sharon Moore should be able to, especially in year 2 and going forward, get someone who can compete with Moss, or just get someone in the portal or through just the traditional high school recruiting. So I think it's definitely, we'll see what happens. However, I still think Moss's social media actions spoke pretty loudly. And while I wasn't able to confirm anything, I still think it wasn't a great look when he first changed his profile photo to one from him in his football uniform to one with his girlfriend on a date night that had nothing to do with the football team. So I think that's not a great look, but okay. Everyone changes their profile photos all the time. Then I noticed he took out his traditional bio he's had in his page for years, which is QB at USC / Sigma Chi. So it seems like he might be hitting the portal. Then also, this is the one that I think is the worst move that he made, was he unfollowed both USC football and Lincoln Riley on Instagram. Now, look, I get he's frustrated. Who wouldn't be frustrated when you know you're getting benched, especially when it's just highly publicized, especially at the quarterback back position. There's no other position really like this where it's one guy who plays and the rest, everyone else just sits on the bench. But I still think just those actions just show frustration, because for all I know, Maiava could get hurt. Things might not go well, and Moss could be right back in. So it doesn't really help him that I think he might be prematurely potentially ruining that relationship. Regardless, though, I think all of us as USC fans need to thank Miller for his, commitment, support, and dedication, even through tough times when he could have left a long time ago after when Caleb Williams first came in 2 years ago. But he chose to stick around through that, through the rebuild, through the Williams era, and then get his shot. So I think we have to thank him for that and for being loyal for all these years and wish him the best of luck. That said, I think he still could have handled it better. But now on to this game. I think that this is a perfect. I think USC, obviously, as we know, is 4-5 overall, 2-5 in Big Ten with 16th place. Maiava is now going to try to be the one to help lead USC to a bowl game with 3 games left. That's Nebraska this week, UCLA next week, and then Notre Dame to close out the season finale. So the game this week is at 1 p.m. on Fox on Saturday. So more interesting news, Nebraska has started out 5-1, but then they have also been in a slump. So I think this is a good game. They've been on a bye, and they've also made some changes, but I still think that USC needs to, this is a game you've got to take advantage of and win, especially with UCLA is now playing better, and Notre Dame is right now contending for a playoff spot. So this is a must-win game to get yourselves back on track and then be ready for that crosstown showdown. So we'll see what happens there. Seems like the Cornhuskers made a change. Dana Holgerson, previously the head coach at West Virginia and Houston, has joined the team, I think, as a offensive consultant. Don't quote me on that, but I think I just read right before coming on here that he will remain as the new OC for the remainder of the season for the Cornhuskers and helped mentor Dylan Raiola, the quarterback of Nebraska. And one other cool thing I think is that this is the first time I think 2 Polynesian quarterbacks will face each other in college football. So I think that's just a really cool thing to see. But overall, wishing the best to Jayden and this team this week as they take on the Cornhuskers at 1 p.m. at the Coliseum. Make sure you are there. Be ready to cheer on this team. One final bit of news for football before we move on to everything else this week is the USC-UCLA game on November 23rd has been announced for 7:30 p.m. kickoff on NBC. And I'm excited for it because it means I don't have to miss the USC Notre Dame women's basketball game at Galen Center earlier that day. This is a game that I've been really excited about ever since I saw it, but I was a little worried that was I gonna have to choose. Fortunately, I'm super happy it's not gonna come to that. So my plan that day is gonna be basketball 1 p.m. to 3. Probably have my car parked right outside Galen. Whoever I'm going with basically be like, all right, either come to the game with me or be at outside at 3. And from there we'll pile in and get straight to the Rose Bowl is the plan in time for that kickoff to tailgate a little bit. Enjoy the game. So I think it's definitely going to be a really exciting game, couple exciting games that day. But anyways, I'll get into more women's basketball at the end of this episode. So now into women's water polo. They have their first action. It's the alumni game this Saturday at 1 p.m. at the Atsangu Aquatic Center. And then their first season action will be in the Beach Invitational on November 18th in Long Beach. Swim and dive, meanwhile, both men's and women's faced Arizona. Swim was facing them at USC, whereas the dive team went to UCLA to compete against the Wildcats. Men's won 169.5 to 130.5, whereas the women's team won 193 to 107. Both teams now improved to 2-0 on the year. Cross country, after a tough finish in the coming 18th of 18th in the Big Ten Championships, now resets and will get ready this week on Friday to take part in the NCAA West Regional, which will occur in Colfax, Washington. Men's volleyball, meanwhile, had their second fall action of the season when they took part in the MPSF versus Big West tournament at Galen Center in the Galen Center Pavilion last Saturday. And they faced CSUN and UCI. No scores were made available, so I'm not sure how they did, but it looks like it was definitely very competitive, allowed their guys to get a lot of reps. And I think obviously there were a lot of teams in these tournaments, so we'll see what happens from there with this team. And best of luck to them in their final fall action against UCLA on November 22nd and 23rd at Pauley Pavilion for the UCLA fall tournament. Men's tennis, meanwhile, took part in the final qualifying events. Niels Hoffman went 1-1 at the ITA Masters Championship at the Rome Tennis Center in Georgia. He won 6-3, 6-4 in his round of 32 matchup, but then fell in the round of 16, 6-3, 6-4. Tristan Bradley and Carl Lee also went 1-1, but at the ITA West sectionals as doubles pair at the Ralph Strauss Tennis Center in Malibu. They won their main draw round of 16 match 6-3, 7-5, but then lost 6-3, 6-4 in the quarters. Then for the singles, Peter Mack and Carl Lee each won in their main draw. They both lost in their main draws of the singles round of 32, but then withdraw from the consolation quarterfinals. And then due to everyone being and who had potential to qualify falling short of the mark to make the NCAA Individual Championships, USC spring season will resume in January for men's tennis. Women's tennis, meanwhile, took part in the ITA sectional championships at the David X. Marks Tennis Stadium. And then in singles, Grace Piper went 3-1 on the weekend, was able to qualify for the NCAA singles, for the NCAA's individuals for singles in Waco, Texas, which will be hosted by Baylor. And she'll also be on for doubles as well. She's previously qualified for it with partner Lily Fairclough. And then other players who took part in this event were Fairclough, Emma Charney, Amy Haddad, Jana Hossman, Maya Sung, and Parker Fry. Men's water polo, meanwhile, in their penultimate matchup of the regular season, won at number 14 UC Santa Barbara 12-8 on Saturday. Luka Bernatich had 3 goals to lead the Trojans. Stefan Brankovic, Jake Carter, and Zach Bettino all had 2 goals each. And then USC just started out strong, and even though the Gauchos clawed back throughout the game, they couldn't overcome the slow start in the first, where USC went up 7-2 after the first quarter. USC, as I mentioned last week, will finish as the 3rd seed in MPSF West play, guaranteeing them the 5th seed in the MPS tournament, which will be hosted at UCLA, who will win the MPSF West. And they'll play Austin College in the first game of the MPSF tournament at 12 p.m. on November 22nd. Final regular season of the match, so before we talk more about the MPSF next week, they'll play at UCLA, so they'll have back-to-back weeks in Westwood at 1 p.m. on Saturday. And this can be watched on overnight.com. And even though USC can't get higher than 3rd, they just need it for the momentum boost heading into the MPSF tournament, which will likely see them play UCLA and or Stanford at some point during the tournament. Bruins are 20-1, only lost to Stanford, so they're very good. But I think this USC team has proven they can compete with the best. So I'd like to see them have a shot at being able to move up from fourth. Maybe they move up to third. They're 18-4 in the year, 2-3 in MPSF. So we'll see. They'll either probably hold at fourth or move up to third with the win. But best of luck to them in their regular season finale against the Bruins. And 4 down, of course, always. Soccer, meanwhile, as I think I apologize to anyone who listened and was kind of, having trouble following. I was trying to do live updates. We'll see if I do that again. I apologize. I don't think that came off as well as I thought it would. I'll figure it out if I ever get caught in that situation again. But soccer beat Ohio State in overtime last week, pretty much right after I signed off. So I could have either stayed on, but I didn't. And then they fell to Rutgers with a final score of 1-1, but then lost 3-0 on PKs at City Park in St. Louis, and which counts as a tie, so it actually doesn't count on their loss record in the semis of the Big Ten tournament. So USC now has a 15-1-3 record. And midfielder Aaliyah Farmer made the all-tournament team for the Big Ten tournament. And USC earlier today was selected as a number 1 seed and will host Sacramento State at Dignity Health Sports Park, the track field in Carson, for the first round game. And Sac State got in by kind of a crazy way. They had to win the Big Sky tournament, and they won all 3 of their matches, all on PKs. So kind of a crazy few days for the Hornets. And if the Trojans win, they'll either host Kansas or St. Louis in the second round and have the ability to host all the way to the quarterfinals should they keep winning. College Cup semifinals, should the Trojans make it out of the quarters, are on December 6th with the final December 9th. All 3 of those games will take place in Cary, North Carolina to determine the national champion of women's soccer. Women's volleyball, meanwhile, had a split this weekend when they lost 3-2 at Illinois on Friday, and yesterday had a 3-1 win at Indiana. Jayden Maiava led the way with 16 kills against the Illini. I got to watch the first set. It was very competitive throughout. And then, obviously, I was following it along. It looked like it was very competitive, back and forth. The Illini did a few things a little better that allowed them to win. And then against the Hoosiers on Sunday, before I get to the action, defensive specialist and outside hitter Greg Gosnell got to sing the national anthem in the return to her undergraduate alma mater for the first time since she left. And I thought it was really beautiful. One of the better national anthem performances I've heard in my life, actually. So it was really cool to just see her get to do that and perform. And it was just great to see her just have such a warm reception back at Indiana for the match before the Trojans got out there and took care of business 3-1. But overall, it was a close match. I think first and fourth sets were won by USC 26-24. Indiana kind of beat up on USC in the second, but then USC returned the favor in the third. They were wider point margins. But overall, my thoughts are with this team is they're really good. Big thing now is just the service errors are killing them. That's been something that's been hurting them all year long. And I think it's been something that's either made them cost them sets or just made sets tighter than they need to be because of the lack of missed serves. So I think that's just something this team needs to work on if they want to be able to try to win out, because they got a tough week ahead and just some tough matchups to close out the season. I think USC's proven they can play with and beat anyone, but you can't do it when missing serves like this. Team now moves to 17-7 on the year, 9-5 in Big Ten. They're tied in 6th with Illinois and Minnesota in the Big Ten standings. They moved down from 20th after being bumped up a spot to 23rd after the split this week. So USC on Thursday night will host with 6th ranked Wisconsin, who's 18-5 and 12-2 in Big Ten. On Thursday on the Big Ten Network. This is the final BTN game. Remaining games will be streamed on Big Ten Plus. And then USC then on Sunday plays 11th ranked Oregon at 1 p.m. on Sunday on Big Ten Plus. USC got swept at Oregon on October 9th, so they'll be looking for revenge, especially after proving they can play close. But it's just going to be able to stay competitive, and the big thing is not miss serves. I think it can all be done, and I think USC can walk out of this week and head back on the road 2-0, but it's going to take a lot of focus, a lot of discipline, and just a lot less missed serves. Now on to the sports I actually got to make it to this week. USC baseball had a fall ball doubleheader at Pepperdine yesterday. They won 6-2 in a game that played 9 innings, and then 9-8 in a game that only got to go to 6 innings. Due to Pepperdine not having lights, they had to call the game after 6 innings. And my thoughts were that, and obviously I thought Ethan Hedges was really impressive in game one. Augie Lopez, a freshman, impressed in game two. But the bats were explosive in both games. Pitching was solid in game one. I think it got a little bit sloppy near the end of game two. So I think overall this team has a lot of potential, especially with a new pitching coach and Sean Allen now helping with the arms. But I think overall this is going to be a really exciting team to watch. I can't wait to cheer them on in February. But overall, I think this is going to be a great team. I think their final action to close out the fall season will be the Cardinal Gold World Series. I'd imagine it'll probably take place at East LA College where they've been practicing this year, but nothing has been made official yet on location, dates, and times. I'll make sure to bring that all to all of you once I hear more. Men's basketball, meanwhile, tipped off this week with games against Chattanooga and Idaho State. They beat Chattanooga last Monday, 77-51, a game that USC was in control the whole time. Chibuzo Agbo had 14 points. Matt Noling had 13. So overall, I think that was just a dominant effort by the Trojans, and you just got to see them really take care of business and just create some excitement, especially they need to just start making statements now and win games if they want people to come. I think Eric Musselman is a great coach. I think he's good at drawing crowds. We've seen him do this before at Nevada and Arkansas, but we as fans need to start showing up for this team because I think this is going to be a special year. As for Idaho State, that was a bit more of a stressful game to watch as a fan. They beat them 75-69 in a game that I think should not have been so close. And I think one thing we ought to remember is just USC needs to take care of business early because if you let schools like the Bengals stay in this game, they treat it like it's a Final Four, especially with some of these guys probably wanting to play at USC and only saying they get a call back and probably never did. So I think USC really needs to just remember that for a lot of these schools they got to face, like UT Arlington next on Wednesday, I'll get to preview that in a sec, but they got to take care of business throughout these games and just make sure they are on top of their game in these. So that's what I think will happen. Josh Cohen led with 19 points, and St. Thomas hit a late three-pointer to help seal the victory. So USC is now 2-0, and they'll face UT Arlington, who's 1-1 on Wednesday at 8 p.m. on the Big Ten Network, and Cal, who is 2-0 and undefeated on Sunday at 6:30 on the Big Ten Network. So I think with UT Arlington, it needs to look more like the Chattanooga game where they're just dominant from start to finish and just make a statement early and just take care of business in this game and knock them out pretty early like USC did in the first half against the Mocs. As for Cal is now in the ACC following the collapse of the Pac-12 as we previously knew it. So I think this team's going to continue to improve under second-year head coach Mark Madsen, who's been phenomenal. I think he did a great job last year helping revive Cal, and also he did a great job at Utah Valley prior to that. So I think they'll look to continue off the progress from last year. And arguably of all the home games on the non-conference schedule, this is probably the toughest one. So I think Madsen's squad is going to be better, especially because they got the coach. So they just got a lot more continuity. And I think this team's going to be USC is going to be good, but it's going to be a great battle. It's part of a home and home. So next year, the Trojans will play at Haas Pavilion up in Berkeley. So it should be a very exciting matchup. Women's basketball, meanwhile, beat Cal Poly in their home opener, 90-35. And so it was over basically at the first quarter. USC went up 40-6 and just never looked back. And this allowed some of the younger players to play. Juju Watkins had 16 points. Freshman Kaylee Heckel and sophomore Malia Samuels both impressed off the bench with 16 and 12 points respectively. Also, big congratulations to Rhea Marshall on hitting 1,000 career points. That game was really fun. A lot of people there. There's clearly excitement for this team. I mean, they're not just doing general admission seating anymore. It's assigned seating, which shows that there's potential in this, especially some of the games they got coming up on the schedule, like Notre Dame and some other games that are going to be shown on national TV and not just the conference, not just the Big Ten Network or streamed. But anyways, also a lot of cool people there. Saweetie was there. Cheryl Miller. She doesn't miss a game. She's always courtside. She's awesome. Then also I bumped into former Sparks coach Kurt Miller, who's now the general manager of the Dallas Wings. So got to chat with him. Looked like he might be scouting. But yeah, it was definitely exciting to just see a lot of familiar face, a lot of cool, a lot of celebs, a lot of just familiar faces there. So it's just really exciting to see just the momentum and potential this team has. Next week, or this upcoming week, they'll face CSUN at tomorrow night at 7 p.m. and Santa Clara on Friday at 12 p.m. Both those games being on the Big Ten Plus. And I think USC needs to dominate these matches early like they did against Cal Poly and help them prepare for Notre Dame. One of their two toughest matches, and one of the more intriguing ones too. On November 23rd, as I mentioned, the same day as UCLA, I will be there for that one. It's going to be a thriller of a matchup, especially when you have Hannah Hidalgo returning to lead the Irish against Juju Watkins and the Trojans. So it's going to be a great matchup I think, for a rivalry that's traditionally thought of as football, but I could see this home and home series really being heated, especially even just with all the, tradition in football. I feel like it's very much going to bleed over into this basketball game. So definitely an exciting week ahead for the women's basketball team. So last week I went 3-0, had the 2 wins against men's basketball, win against women's basketball, the 2 baseball games because they are fall ball and don't count on the team's win-loss record. I don't count them either. My plans for this week. It's going to be a busy week, going to be on a rampage more than I think the last time I said I was on a rampage. So women's basketball against CSUN Tuesday night, men's basketball against UT Arlington Wednesday night, women's volleyball against Wisconsin Thursday, women's basketball against Santa Clara Friday, football against Nebraska on Sunday, and then women's volleyball versus Oregon and men's basketball versus Cal on Sunday. So definitely a busy week. That's what I'll be at this week. Make sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, X, YouTube, TikTok, everywhere just to see what I'm at, what I'm doing, and just be able to, stay tuned with everything USC athletics. If you see me anything, obviously come say hi. I'd love to chat with you about USC sports. So that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you again to everyone who's been tuning in and supporting this podcast. I enjoy doing it immensely. I'll see y'all next week. Bye, Don.